Hey guys, welcome to another episode of our Herface Shop Shop. This week we're working on the 25. Alright, so if you're new to the channel, this is my 1973 K25. So I chased this thing for about 4 months. I had a small lead about a guy that might want to sell it, and then managed to track him down, hassle him enough to get him to sell it. So the plan with this thing originally was to just make a nice clean straighter with the little Toreno guards, or Levin guards, what do you call them, the T27 guards, T27 spoiler and T27 chin spoiler, which it already had on it. Things have escalated, to say the least. So new struts in the front, which was always the plan anyway, but I'm going to go as wide as possible, and then chuck on a big wheel as well. So I've started doing some part-time work at an engineer's here in South Australia, so I'm going to bend the rules as much as I can. I'm not going to break any laws, I'm just going to try and push them to the absolute limit. So the front of this thing, if I make the track wider, I can put the wheels out further, obviously. And then if I put struts from a bigger car, like these ones, then I can put bigger wheels and bigger offsets and all that sort of stuff. So this is the second set of struts, which I'll talk to you about later, but these allow me to run a 0 offset in the front. So originally this car had a 20 offset, which would mean at most I could go to a 7, so plus 7. We're allowed 13 mil either side, so about an inch overall. So the plan is to run these struts and get me to a 0 offset instead of 7, which is not much, but it's like, nearly 10 mil. And then these struts actually introduce positive camber, so that makes the top of the wheel point out from the car. So when you then extend the lower control arm, it brings the camber back around. So the plan is to push these as negative as possible, and then push the bottom out and gain as much width as I can. So I've done some rough measurements, and now the hub-to-hub width of the front, roughly, is about 1380 mil. So from factory, these are only about 1270. So I've gained a fair bit already from side to side. And then I'm going to go a much wider tyre and rim. So I'm going to go to a 7.5 instead of a 6, I think they were, maybe a 5. And they were plus 20, and they're going to be 0 now. So overall, in the front, from the outside of each of the stock tyres to now, I've added nearly 230 mil. So the same goes for the back. I picked up a Hilux diff from a mate of mine. Thank you, Blake. I don't know if you watch these, but I pretty much stole it. So gave me a Hilux diff, super cheap, that's been shortened already. I took a gamble hoping it was the right length, and it was 1350 something. So 1355 mil from hub face to hub face. So it's obviously 30 or 25 mil shorter or narrower than the front. So the plan is to put bigger wheels on the back, obviously. So if I run a 9.0 in the back, it makes the outside of the 9s in the back to the outside of the front 7.5s. There's only about 10 mil in it. So it's pretty damn close. And then you got to think, if I run a bit of if I run a bit of negative camber in the front, that'll push the bottom of the tyre out a bit more as well, and it will pretty much even out front to back, side to side, all that sort of stuff. And worst case, I'm going to get adjustable camber tops, and I can push the camber more positive and make the lower control arm longer to adjust for the back width. So there's a hell of a mouthful and a lot of talking, but what I'm saying is I need massive flares, and this is going to be really rowdy. So the plan's going to be pretty much a street race car. I want to take all the seats out, all the interior out, run as little as possible, get some nice bucket seats, half cage, probably harnesses and seat belts and everything, and get this thing like full street track attack type spec. And then for now, I'm just going to put a 7K back in it, which defeats the purpose of the race carness, but that's for now. And then later on, there is other plans that you'll have to see unfold. So 7K, 5-speed, Hilux diff, MA61 struts, big wide tyres, flares, rah-rah. Probably do big brakes if I can fit them under the wheels I want to get. I'm going to order brand new works because I know what I want. They're going to be really expensive. And then half cage, probably Velo bucket seats, and just a whole round go over. Alright, so let's get stuck into this thing. It's been sitting for too long. So I pulled the front end out of this a while ago. I've given some bits to Ronnie, who's the engineer friend of mine. He's taking that to work and going to try and build me some camber tops. So I've got two different sets of struts to try and fit. I had XT130s, but they weren't going to be good enough, so I've got MA61 struts and brakes. So I need to cut them, shut them, make them fit, and then make a lower control arm that's longer to get all the camber in the right spot, and then order some wheels. So work out how big the flares are, work out how wide I want everything, how big a wheel I want, and then order some wheels. So if we're going to start working on this 25, first things first, we've got to set the ride height, 100 millimeters. So box section under the seals, box section under the crossmember. That makes the bottom of the car 100 mil. So this is how high it can be when it's got its full weight on it. So in South Australia it has to be 100 mil, most of Australia has to be 100 millimeters, clearance under the whole way. So that's where I'm going to start. And then I also got some new struts. So these are MA61. The hub's slightly different and there's a little bit more positive camber. So I want to make this thing as wide as I can. So positive camber, push the bottom lower control arm out until it's straight. Will get me a whole bunch more track. I did have XT130s, which I still have clearly, but they're not going to allow me to run as big a wheel as the MAs. So what I'm going to do is pull this apart, put the K20 strut top on it, and then set up the wheel at the correct height, and then work out how long a lower control arm I need. Then I'm going to cut the lower control arm I've got, make it the right length, and then just tack it together. Give that Frankenstein lower control arm to my mate who's got the Commodores, and he's going to make me some new lower control arms. So I've put the K20 strut top onto the MA61 strut, and first problem when this is in the right spot, the spring perch hits onto the body. So I'm going to have to cut that off. I'm going to be shortening these anyway, but for now I don't want to cut too much because I want to try and keep it all together. So I'll just cut the spring perch off and then I'll be able to get the hub in the right spot. And then the tyres that I run on the wagon are the smallest ones I could find at the time. Their diameter is 526 mil, so half of that plus a bit, blah blah blah, comes out at 225 plus 40 mil. So 225 at this bottom stud and then 40 mil to the center of the hub. So I've made this out of some scrap. So this bottom hole is at 225. The center of these two holes is at 265, which is the center of the tire. Then that hole is the top stud. So the plan is once this is in the right spot, I'll slide that piece of metal in over the two studs, clamp it all together, and then once that's square, this is all square, and then we know how long the lower control arm is. So the next problem is I don't have the steering arms for the MA61 stuff yet. So the RA640 stuff or RA60 stuff I've got, and the K20 stuff and the K70 stuff, and all of the ones I'd have are all the wrong size. So I need to get the other steering arms for these, which I'm getting when I get the other strut. I bought this one as a measurement piece and then it ends up being what I needed, and I end up buying the struts off the guy. But I haven't picked them up yet, so I've only got the one that I borrowed, and I still haven't paid him or anything. So I'm going to cut this up and hope he's okay with me paying him later. So I'll cut this spring perch off and then put it back in the car. Alright, so as you can see I've got the T-piece back in that I made. The clamps holding the hub to the T-piece nice and square. And then I've cut away the spring perch so everything clears. And then I've got these two electric angle meters. I zeroed them both out on the ground. This one's sort of flickering a little bit. But as you can see, about 0. So that'll be my 0 degree camber. And then if I want to move this out and set 1.5 or 2 degrees or whatever, that would then come into play. So what I need to do now is make the lower control arm, so bolt it into the crossmember, come all the way out and back into the bottom of the strut. But because I haven't got the right steering arms, I'm going to leave that for now, and then I'll have to do that later. But as you can see, that's the simple idea. So then the next step would be to cut and shut the lower control arm. Does the handbrake work? Alright, cool. We need a ramp for that front bit.
Kill the motor for a bit.
Turn.
Which way?
Around the mud.
Yeah.
Alright, stop moving over the gate.
Ugh. Got the roller on me.
Sometimes you just gotta let them go. Sometimes you don't have the time. You don't have the resources. Sometimes you have to let them go. So the 25 is sold. It's going to Mr. Ryan. It's a good home for it. It's a bit sad, but sometimes you just gotta let go. See you, mate. Sometimes you don't want peanut butter.